Now joining us, one of the folks who's running in tonight's election is Jamaal Bowman. Congressman Jamaal Bowman joins us. Congressman Bowman, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, brother. How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
No problem. Of course, you're in a race. You're very progressive. There's going to be controversies. There's going to be people gunning for you. One of your opponents, Vedat Ghashi, seemed to have darkened your picture in some of his mailers. That created a controversy. Tell us about that. What was your take on that?
I mean, honestly, when I saw it, I was more excited about my mailer that hit the mailbox at the same time. So it was a great contrast. So it was his negative, darkened mailer, and it was my normal peace and love, joyful, in the community with the people mailer. So I was more like excited and happy about mine than I was like pissed off about him. And honestly, when you're black in America, you're just used to like racist happening like every other day in one way or another, whether it's an expression of implicit bias or outright racism. You know, I think what's frustrating also though is not just him, but the other candidate, as well as how I've been covered throughout my time in Congress by certain publications, has been a huge dog whistle to racists throughout the district and neighboring areas as well. So it's something that, you know, this election is going to be part of a reckoning if we're able to pull this out. A lot of this politics as usual that's been going on for far too long. And lastly, you know, to have this be Democrat on Democrat shows how we need to deal with racism directly in the Democratic Party, and we just can't put it on Republicans.
Speaking of which, there was another controversy of the New York Times endorsing 3 white men, including Daniel Goldman, that was connected to the Sulzberger family who owns the New York Times. But they didn't bother endorsing you. They normally endorse incumbents, and yours is an easy endorsement. What did you make of their non-endorsement in your race?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we didn't aggressively pursue an endorsement from the New York Times this time around. So I wouldn't put it completely on them. And they didn't endorse an opponent, so that's also a good thing. But to your original point, I mean, you know, we had amazing progressive people of color like Mondaire and Yulene and Carlina in New York 10. Myself in New York 16, and women like Biaggi in New York 17. But it's like there's been this, you know, part of my learning in Congress this first cycle has been this complete backlash against progressives, both nationally and locally. And I think that has blown me away more than anything. The beef, if you will, that moderates and corporate Democrats have with progressives is like, my man, I don't want no smoke with you. Why you keep coming for me? And when I saw the New York Times editorial write the op-ed after the November elections, blaming progressives for our loss in Virginia and the almost loss in New Jersey, my first question was like, what the hell is happening here? How do you blame progressives for that? So the party, again, has a lot of work to do in these areas.
So I want to let Emma and Jessica get in here in a second, but you mentioned the very next question I was going to ask you, because we talked about this before you won and right after you won, and about how they were going to come for progressives and they're not really your allies, the Democratic leadership, established Democrats, establishment media, et cetera. And I was going to ask you, now that you've served a full term, basically your first term, what has been your biggest takeaway from those 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of them, right? The way that moderates and more conservative and corporate Democrats engage with progressives. I mean, some of them are even afraid to have a conversation with me. I mean, I've reached out to Democrats in swing districts to tell them that I want to be helpful after my race in helping them to get reelected. And they just seem so uncomfortable even engaging me in the conversation because of this fear for progressives. And I know why the fear is there. The fear is there because progressives are calling out the status quo, speaking truth to power regarding the inequity and inequality and injustices rooted in throughout a corrupt system. And this is a system that they have benefited from. So to see that play out after the BIF vote and after the November elections really resonated with me how strongly they are in terms of coming after us. So that was one big learning. The second big learning, and even though I knew this from afar, but to see how money really controls Congress is really startling. It's like if a special interest group wants a bill to move through Congress without committee, without a markup, without a hearing, it will do so, or they will try to make it do so. So those are two big learnings. But also, lastly, I'll add this. I've also learned about the power of my own voice in my own office and how to use that leverage in working with others like the squad and others to make sure the BS doesn't happen and doesn't move forward. So all three of those things have been incredibly important.
Jamaal, I'm in New York 10, and I voted for Yulene today, and it was a bit of a bittersweet moment because I love her candidacy, but to vote not for Mondaire Jones, who was somebody who I was supportive of, back when I was with TYT, and who's somebody who I believe is a strong progressive. That was something that was hard for me to do, but it was a strategic choice. And I'm just curious about your take generally about the redistricting process, how that was so difficult for you and to navigate in your race, and how it kind of edged out some progressive voices and made a mess of things and made things difficult, frankly, for a lot of progressive candidates in the state.
Yeah, we completely screwed that up. I mean, we as Democrats, to have a supermajority in the state legislature, to have control of the House of Representatives, and to botch that up the way we did, all because, in my opinion, I think we got greedy with the way we drew the lines, and that greed led to the lines being thrown out by Democratic appointed judges. Maybe small d Democrat by name, but not like corporate promo Democrats, but they were Democrats. To have that happen the way it happened was just a travesty. And to have Mondaire, what happened to Mondaire and him having to run in New York 10 was also, it's heartbreaking for me personally. Mondaire is an incredible member of Congress. He's brilliant as a person and in his role as a member of Congress. And he needs to be coming back to Congress. And it's unfortunate that he had to run in a seat that's not in his district. And obviously that hurt him. And the way Sean, handled that from the beginning. I mean, he looked at the map for like 20 minutes and was like, I'm running in 17. And that was crazy to me. And then Mondaire had a decision to make. And, it's easy for us to say run against Sean, but Sean's the DCCC chair and has all the money and power and support in the world. And then on the other side, you got running against me, and it's something I know he didn't want to do, and obviously I didn't want him to do, because I would have hated to have to run against my brother and someone who's another progressive and who's great in Congress. So it's just we screwed that up, and we need to figure out how to make it right as a party. And again, it's another example of how the party stumbles over itself to figure out how to be a real big tent party and really represent everyone instead of using progressives as proxy weapons to other progressives.
So I got to do a quick follow-up there. My take on that situation, Jamaal, was that Sean Patrick Maloney wanted to push Mondaire into your race so they could take out at least one of the progressive incumbents. What's your take on that?
I mean, I've heard that, I don't know for sure. You know what I'm saying? That would have been tough, man. That doesn't, to me, again, it doesn't why would you do that? At the same time, it looks like that's what happened. And it looks like that was another example of, the corporate Dems trying to come after progressives, right? So I don't know, I haven't really explored that. I mean, that whole week, I was chilling and not even to me, it wasn't even my fight. It was like, yo, Sean and my dad got to figure that out, and then we go from there. And plus, I don't know if you remember that week, but that was the week where the Buffalo shooting happened. And my office wrote a resolution condemning the Great Replacement Theory, and then we were hustling to try to get that resolution passed. So I literally, on my mind, I wasn't even thinking about redistricting. I was focused on that resolution. So I don't know, man, but it's not far-fetched to think that that's possible.
Yeah, Jamaal, with rent inflation going out of control, prices going up everywhere, it feels like a lot of everyday people care a lot about bills and rent. That's what's on their mind. And there's a lot of momentum among workers to fight for better wages and stand up to these corporations that are exploiting them. And you're a co-sponsor of the PRO Act. What do you feel like your role as a congressman is beyond just sponsoring the PRO Act to support that? Has it come up this election cycle?
Yes, it has. So we also authored something called the Emergency Price Stabilization Act, which is looking at price controls as a response to the inflation we see in different industries. So what it does is it authorizes the White House to go a little bit further in really understanding what's happening with supply chain shortages, price gouging, and really forcing corporations to open up their books so that we can see where the price control should land, if they should land there anywhere. So we're proud to be the author of that bill. And we're also the author of two other bills, the Ending Corporate Greed Act and the Babies Over Billionaires Act. Ending corporate greed is all about taxing windfall profits of companies that make, I believe, over 100 million in profits at 95%, so that we can, again, generate revenue to invest in other areas and ease inflationary pressures. So we've introduced a slew of.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.